My name is Peter Gentala, and I'm the chairman of this committee. This is the DCS Community Advisory Committee, and we really appreciate all the members of the committee for taking their time to be part of this. We just went through the roll call for the interest of time. Instead of going through with the normal introductions, what I'm going to ask is that committee members, since we're all participating by phone, will just every time they speak, say who they are, so that we can avoid talking over each other and just make sure that we're connecting well. We have a fairly full agenda that's here, and at this time I want to check with Felix. We've got 3 agenda items that require the presentation of someone from the department. Felix, do we have more than one presenter, or do we have one person from the department that's handling multiple agenda items? Who's going to be our team from the department that's presenting today?
We have 2 people, Gillian Vaness and Catherine Guffey right now, and the director would be calling in around 3 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm comfortable taking either of those other agenda items. Would either Catherine or Keelan like to go ahead with their agenda item, and we'll see if we can do both or at least one of them before the director joins us for the update on the pandemic measures.
We had Gillian first on the agenda. So if you want to go ahead, that would be fine.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm here. Those of you on the phone can't see me, but if you're on the computer, I'm here. So I believe that I'm addressing shared parenting, and then I think I'm also touching on challenges with COVID, but Catherine can jump in and help me at any point in time. So we've been working for over a year on creating the shared parenting journal. I believe I talked about it the last time I presented to the committee, and so here it is. I'm showing it to everybody on the screen. We had printed 2,500 copies in advance of this pandemic occurring, and when we made the push to go virtual and stop in-person visitations, which I believe happened in late May, we decided to go ahead and launch the shared parenting program without any sort of pilot. We just released it. So all of the journals were delivered to agencies and or foster families and kinship families in May. So they're in the hands of people to start using them. Initially, the purpose, just in releasing it during COVID, was to engage foster families and some kinship families in their understanding of shared parenting, and then the hopes that they would start doing some of the activities during the COVID pandemic and build that connection with foster parents as we were doing virtual visitations and things of that nature, so that they could start that engagement and that they would find the journal to be a support to them during these challenges. We just began in-person visitations within the last week with parents again, so we have not received any feedback on how the journal is going back and forth, so we're still waiting to hear about that. However, the initial response, there's been some talk on social media about it, and people's feelings about the look and feel and the activities in the journal, and it's all been positive. In addition to the journal being delivered, we launched a landing page, which is dcs.az.gov /shared parenting. And that website has printable pages that you can download in addition to the journal. If the journal runs out of space, you can get extras there, as well as, talks a little bit more about a shared parenting journey. We are also working on creating a Spanish translation of the journal and creating a Spanish landing page with those extra printable pages as well. So that's really my update on the shared parenting journal. We're hoping that the feedback we receive now that we've gone back to in-person visitation is positive, and that people are finding it a useful tool. And we'll continue to revisit it and expand upon it as we get that feedback. Does anyone have questions?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Van Ness. And members, any questions for Ms. Van Ness about the shared parenting presentation?
I don't have any questions, but I have a comment. I've seen the journal, and it's beautiful and amazing, and a wonderful document for foster parents to use with birth parents and the children, and a great way to document the child's life in foster care. I would also be curious to hear feedback, because I've heard a lot of engagement with foster placements and birth parents during the virtual visits. So it'll be great to find out if they actually use those activities and started to fill out that journal cooperatively.
And I'd be happy.
And I forgot to say my name. It was Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. Members, any other questions? I'll chime in with one. Gillian, I'm looking at the website. Are all of these, when you take the calendar pages, the conversation log, the visit log, all these different resources that are there, is that, when they're all together, does that equal the journal document as a whole?
Yes, so the journal has some additional pages than what those that you're seeing on the website is. The reason for those specific pages on the website is we felt like, depending on the child's time in care, they might need additional pages to the existing journal. So that's why those are there. There's some activities in the journal. There's some sort of like talking points, instructions for foster parents on how they can help support a birth family through this journey, and how they can help calm their own nerves and engage, and then also how they can have some of the more, tough conversations with children as they go through this journey. So the pages on the website are really just meant to add on to the existing journal. We have talked about putting a printable version of the journal on the website, but again, we wanted to get feedback first to see if we were going to need to do any modifications to the journal before we did that, since it's very new.
How is that feedback coming in? Is there one avenue for it, or is it more just organically coming in through things like email?
So all of the agencies know to reach out to Ricky Denwood, who's our foster recruitment and retention specialist, for those updates. We have seen organic information come through social media pages when we first delivered them, just people's initial reaction and response to the journals. But there is a path for informative feedback as well to come through Ricky as we begin to engage.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
Nicole, this is Robin. Do you have a specific recommendation for what you would like DCS to provide the public and us as a result of this initiative?
Not necessarily.
Okay, I just want to make sure I recorded it if there was a specific action item you were looking for.
I don't think so.
Peter, this is Bonnie. I'm wondering if DCS has any intent of tracking whether those parents, foster parents who use the parenting journal have less placement disruptions, or if there's sooner reunification for those people who are using the parenting journal, or any of the kind of outcome-y stuff that we might be looking at. I think those of us who believe in shared parenting think that there's going to be those positive outcomes, but are we tracking it at all?
So that is a great suggestion. Because we did not launch it the way we anticipated, we did not set up to do that. However, I will absolutely take that feedback back and see what we can do to follow along the people that do receive the journals. We do know we have a list of a certain number of foster families that personally received the journal, not through their agency. So we could start there to try and see that information.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Gillian. Any other questions about this presentation, members?
Peter,
Yes,
just a quick question, because it was raised in the chat box. Will you be discussing the annual report? That was the second item after introductions on the agenda.
Yes, I've got the agenda in front of me. Members, I think I'm just trying, since we've lost a little bit of time, I want to make sure I respect the time of our presenters who've made themselves available. So I leapfrogged agenda item 2. Thank you for that clarification. What I'd like to do is transition to Catherine Guffey's presentation, so we make sure that we have her there, and that will probably take us right up until the director's time, and then after the director, we can circle back to the report.
Okay. Let me just share here. Where is it? Oh, here we are. Okay. I have on the screen, and trying to get this bigger.
Can you remove my notes, Felix, and just show the slides, please?
Yeah. Let me go back here. Stop sharing. Technologically challenged today.
And Peter, could you let me know before I get started how much time I have? What time is the director supposed to join us?
There's 20 minutes until he's scheduled to join us at the top of the hour.
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started while Felix figures out how to show the slides. So I'm here today, and hello everybody. It's nice to hear your voices. I'm here today to talk about the Family First Prevention Services Act, and particularly the service array that we're working on to come into compliance with that act. Oh, well, there's Mike. So maybe Mike would like to go first. If we can't hear him.
Did the director join us?
Yes.
The director's mic might be muted.
Hey guys, don't mean to interrupt.
Hello, director.
If you want to finish, I'm more than happy. I got time.
We were just about to start an entire agenda item, so it's up to you. We could go directly to your report, or we could take on this other item.
And Catherine, what are you talking about? Families First?
Yes.
I will gladly go first.
You don't want to hear what I have to say?
Yeah. So Peter, thanks for having me back again today. I always appreciate any time I get to share with you guys. I guess before I begin and just share some thoughts, are there any particular topics you'd like more information on? Because I do know Gillian was on earlier, I believe, sharing some updates as well.
So the status of how things are going with the pandemic response is first and foremost on everyone's mind. Gillian just shared a very helpful presentation about the Shared Parenting Journal and how that initiative has been rolling out. And Catherine is going to address Families First and the way the evidence-based program rolls out afterwards. But those are the areas that are covered. So whatever you would like to discuss as a priority after that is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me back. I think last time we talked, it's been about a month. We gave an update on the immediate actions the department was taking in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that, we've continued building upon what we had provided last time. So since we last met, we have transitioned back to in-person visitation between children and parents. I can't tell you how much I'm happy we're back to that, and it's not that it's easy. We support probably somewhere between 10 and 15,000 visits a week. And so with that, as you're doing that globally across the state, it gets to be a bit of a challenge, but we understand how important parenting time is between children and their parents, and after having gone 10 weeks without seeing the parents face to face, we are super excited to be back. That does not come without challenges, and so as I had referred you to last time, I will always refer you back to dcs.az.gov. That's our webpage, and on there's a COVID-19 landing spot where you can find additional guidance and direction that we provide for in-person contacts. And in there, you'll see very specifics around expectations for caregivers, for parents, for staff. And then I'm just joining the call now because every Friday we do calls with the provider community. We do them with group homes. We do them with the foster licensing agencies. We do with the parent aid and SVO providers. And we just finished the in-home providers as well, where we answer questions and make sure we do our best to align practice guidelines so we're all conducting business in the same way. We've had a handful of challenges come up, and we see them in a couple of different fronts. We are still allowing virtual visitation for a couple of specific cohorts of kids, the first being medically fragile children. So a child who is medically fragile, we're going to defer to their primary care physician and let the physician determine if it's acceptable, whether or not to transition back to in-person visits. If it is, we do, and if not, we're going to continue virtual. For children whose parents are residing on the Navajo Nation, we're also doing those visits virtually. And we will, I think we had it earmarked through the 26th of June, and we'll revisit that as the month goes on. For everyone else, we're doing our best to transition back. As with anything, we've had apprehensions, both from family members, from caregivers, in situations where maybe they weren't ready to go back to in-person. We're doing our best to navigate those spaces to make sure we're supporting the caregivers, to make sure we're supporting family members, to make sure that everyone is doing our best to support the in-person visit. So various things get escalated. I would think from my staff's time, from the executive level team, probably to the next tier down, the majority of our time each week is spent problem solving through these various escalations that come up. Then as we learn from those escalations, we update our guidance documents, put them back out, and then provide updates during our Friday updates with the providers. So there's just this sequence of events we follow each week where we're continuing to put out more guidance, answer new questions, problem solve, and go from there. As we see more mobility in the community, we're seeing, you've seen the same news I have, an increase in cases over the last 2 weeks, some increased percentage in positive cases. With that, we continue to take that into consideration as we evaluate our directives. As we evaluate our directives and instructions to the staff, we'll continue to take that public health guidance into our thinking as we make changes, and we do connect directly with public health officials as we make our decisions and adjust our guidelines accordingly. We're going to continue this heightened level of engagement with the provider community and our communication out to caregivers and to families, at least through phase 2. And so by heightened level of communication, I mean every week we communicate with our own staff somewhere between 2 and 3 times, both in written and in recorded videos that we put out to our staff. Additionally, we write letters to caregivers and to parents. Sorry, it's been a long week and I keep yawning. We write letters to them each week. We publish those in both English and Spanish. They're available on our website as well for anyone's review who'd like to see them. And we think that's a critical part of staying connected with families, making sure they understand where we're going and where we need their help in being successful. So I think that's at a high level, probably the update I've got for the committee today, Peter. If there's any questions that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Director. Members, any questions for Director Faust?
Peter, this is Bonnie. Oh,
go ahead, Bonnie.
Mark. Nope. I just wanted to thank the director and his staff for the partnership with the provider community through this crisis. We very much appreciate that, and it has been a true partnership. So I want to say that publicly and boldly.
Bonnie, I appreciate that comment, and you know what I appreciate about it, the relationship we have with the provider community. I think Alex and I were talking about, Alex Ong and I were talking about this earlier in the week. 5 years ago, we didn't have the ability to do what we would never been able to handle this, and we worked very intentionally over the last 5 years to build that relationship. And, you know, Bonnie, where you and I and Catherine probably know this example, others on the phone won't. We had put out some guidelines. The provider community came back with some very specific things that, you know, I pushed back on, but you know what? They were probably correct. And so we went ahead and made some of those revisions, and I think it strengthened our guidelines and then provided us the ability to work together, forward thinking, to be able to support families in a more effective way. So Bonnie, we truly appreciate this working relationship we have, and it's rooted in a commitment to serve children and families, and that's what's most important.
Thank you. Mark, did you have a question?
No, mine was the same comment as Bonnie's. I just wanted to thank the director and just to inform publicly as well. I think he and his team have done an excellent job in communication and how they've been working. So it was just a amen or a second to what she had said.
I appreciate that.
Members, do you have any other questions for Director Faust? All right, I don't hear any more. Director, thank you very much for being with us, for taking the time. Thank you for the array of tools that are on the website. And of course, those just represent the commitment to partnership and transparency and just connectedness that you and your team have. And we really appreciate that. It's been great to have your leadership and during this time. And we're all glad for the partnership with you. We hope that the trending continues to be in a positive way. I guess one thought I do have, as we close, is there anything about reopening that would occasion, I guess, what is there communication that we should be looking for as stakeholders to watch for related to trending as reopening continues?
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. I tell you what, the things that we watch very closely is just the regular updates with the governor's office around the very specific gating criteria. So where are we on COVID-like, influenza-like symptoms? Where are we on hospital capacity? Where are we on % positive tests? And that's one I watch very closely. And then also a hospitalization, whether it is emergency room visits or inpatient numbers, then the percentage of that, and what is the trend that we're seeing. So we've seen a pretty solid trend reducing and people being visiting the hospital, as well as people visiting the hospital, as well as being admitted to the hospital for COVID-like symptoms. We've seen a pretty consistent reduction in that. And so I think with that, I felt pretty positive. I think with the opening of the communities and the reducing of the stay-home order and the restrictions that were in place, it was inevitable we would see some uptick. So I think it's going to be important just to watch that % positive as it go forward over the next couple of weeks to see if that trend then continues. And again, we're looking for 14 consecutive days with that trend going down. And that'll give the governor, and his team at public health an opportunity to maybe open up the next door. For us, as we've started to return back to more in-person work, We're going to keep some of our safety precautions in place for quite a while, and then we're going to keep making our way this direction of starting to ease those things back just as we go forward. So we'll keep communicating. Peter, one thing I'd be remiss if I did not specifically address while we were on the phone today, so if you could indulge me for a couple of minutes. I addressed in a video to our staff earlier this week, and I addressed again today specifically with our caregivers, the group homes and the licensing workers working with foster parents. And I did want to specifically address the injustice in our communities that we're seeing brought up within the protests nationwide. And I think the message I sent with the couple of provider groups we've had and the conversation that we had with our own staff here is, there's a lot of dynamics there to consider, and there's a lot of, emotion behind it, and many years of frustration and pain associated with biases and racism and barriers and challenges. And as we're serving in communities, it's important for us to be able to have those conversations. It's important for us to be able to process these emotions, especially with these kids who are, I've been talking with my own daughters about this a lot, because the way they consume news and the way they consume information is very different than maybe how I consume it. And they consume through social media and 10-second, clips on TikTok. And so being able to have a meaningful dialogue about what's happening and being able to process through that emotion, I think has been very important. And as I iterated too, I encourage the providers and our caregivers to be having these conversations with kids in care, because they share those frustrations and they've experienced some of these injustices themselves. That's what brought them, into care. So as we work through these things, I think it is important that we as a system, that we as independent organizations, and we as individuals are free in having those dialogues and those engagements, because without that, we can't learn how to set aside our personal biases that can maybe contribute to those barriers, or at a minimum, if we don't set them aside and come along those folks who have been wronged to understand the emotions that they're going through. It's impossible for me to walk in another person's shoes, but I can have empathy and understand the emotion that they're going through, and then respect everyone involved in the equation and have some understanding to be able to unpack that. And then for our foster youth to be able to help them problem solve through that, share their emotion and know that it's completely okay to echo those emotions and get them out there. So I wanted to touch on that because I think it's top of mind for a lot of folks right now, and specifically for our youth in care and for the folks engaging in communities around the state. It's important that we take these topics head on and have meaningful conversations and be able to really unpack the emotion behind it. Because as I look at a lot of the protesters out there, braving the heat that's out there, although race is at the top of some of those discussions, there's a lot of injustices that I think people are out there protesting against now. And so how can we really learn from this, unpack them, digest them, and then help that next generation of kids to break the cycles that so many generations before us have experienced. So thank you for allowing me to share that, and thanks for letting me come today and speak with y'all.
Thank you, Director. I'm sorry that you couldn't see us all by video screen, because I'm sure you would have seen vigorous nodding as you made those last comments. I really appreciate how you and your team are being worthy of the moment. It is a wonderful time to have life-changing conversations with children about this. And I know my own kids have been profoundly affected, and let's not leave it to the media. I think that's a great call, to not just have it be something where we're consuming information about it, but it goes to the next level, how to have the conversations about how we can love, support, care for people, understand people who are different from us. All of those things are top of mind in our children's minds right now. And with regard to the children in care in Arizona, they are so courageous. They've gone through a lot already, and they are, this is a great time. I appreciate that you've reminded your team that this is a great time to reach out to them and have those important conversations, because they will have an impact. They'll have a profound impact. And of course, this is the kind of conversation, those conversations don't get covered by the media, like everything else. So I really appreciate sharing that. Okay, members, anything else for Director Faust before we let him go and move on to our mission?
Hey, thank you all for your time. Have a safe weekend. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Director. Thank everybody. Okay, Catherine, thank you for having the flexibility to be leapfrogged there. I appreciate that, and we'll hear from you now.
Catherine, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Armando. Peter, can you tell me how much time I have?
You're doing fine. I mean, we could take 10-15 minutes comfortably with your side of things and still be able to manage the rest of our agenda comfortably.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to hurry then, because there's a lot of information to provide. So I'll just do this quickly. And I know many of you can't see the slides. Hopefully Felix has sent them to you. If you can see, there is a timeline here of our project around looking at parent skill building programs in particular to come into alignment with FFPSA. We've been doing some exploration quite a bit since February of 2018 when FFPSA was signed. We've been looking at substance use disorder services. That contract is being updated and about to be resolicited with more evidence-based programming included. Mental health services are included under FFPSA, and we've been looking at what the current availability is of well-supported programs and supported programs. And then parent skill building programs is where we've spent most of our time. So we began that exploration of programs in 2018, seeking input from community partners. We've had some surveys. We've had a symposium that was well attended, probably by more than 100 of our partners. We issued a request for information to get input into program selection. We held a brainstorming meeting related to domestic violence, which was extremely helpful. We did that in collaboration with the Arizona Council of Human Service Providers and the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. And then we reviewed extensive data on the demographic characteristics and needs of families who are currently receiving services through DCS in-home. That analysis confirmed for us that our services need to be effective with some specific target populations. First of all, we know that we need to serve families with children of all ages, but we need to make sure that we have programs for families with young children, because that is the largest portion of families that we serve, and particularly those who have a substance-exposed newborn, and then also adolescents with emotional or behavioral concerns. We need to have services that are effective with families experiencing domestic violence. We see in our data that the prevalence of domestic violence is almost as high as that of substance use disorder. Families with a multitude of needs, such as substance use, domestic violence, and housing instability occurring together. And then families from communities experiencing disproportionality in removal rates. These are the families that Mike was just speaking about, and you know, we have a history in child welfare that we need to address, as well as criminal justice does, specifically related to African American and Native American families who do enter care at disproportionate rates in Arizona. So the input that the provider community has given to us has been given a lot of weight. Providers shared with us their experiences and recommendations about particular programs and parenting skills curriculum. They also recommended to us that our programs need to be flexible enough to help families with whatever needs those families have, and to be able to adapt to those needs as they change, so that the provider can go to the home and join with the family to discuss whatever is happening today and not be constrained by a highly structured curriculum and program. So those things were certainly considered as we were thinking about the best programs. Some of the service delivery objectives that we're looking for are fully defined programs so that fidelity and therefore effectiveness can be measured. We want to have single program curriculum and clinical skills statewide so that throughout the system we speak the same language. A secondary benefit of that is the ability to have centralized training so that we can experience economies of scale and more control over the quality and the consistency of service provider training, and then better coordination of services. So some of our families are participating in services through more than one agency, and sometimes that becomes problematic if we haven't identified a lead agency who's aware of everything that the family's involved in and what's being asked of them, and can actually interfere with their success because there's some duplication. They may even be asked to do things that aren't necessary. So having somebody, a lead, to coordinate that is one of the objectives of what we're trying to achieve. And Felix, if you want to move to the next slide. So we received technical assistance from a team of consultants who have clinical, contracting, and program evaluation experience. They reviewed hundreds of evidence-based programs from numerous websites and organizations that rate programs on evidence-based. They reduced that to a list of 32 that were given serious consideration. And then we got further input from the community through a request for information. We evaluated those programs with these questions in mind. Is it a good fit with our target populations? Does it align with our practice framework and our values? Will we be able to hire qualified staff to deliver the service? Can we create independent Arizona training capacity? Is it operationally easy to implement? Will we be able to monitor fidelity and outcomes easily? What does it cost? And what is the evidence base related to the FFPSA standards? So those are a lot of questions, and each one of them has a lot of thinking that needs to occur. So there's been a lot of time spent examining programs to achieve selection of those that we think will have the best benefit in achieving the outcomes we're trying to achieve. So, of course, the goal is to provide the most effective services to strengthen families so that children can remain or return home. That really is the purpose of FFPSA. That's the intent behind that law, is to achieve these outcomes. And so this is what we have in mind and that we will measure. Preventing entries into out-of-home care, increasing the rates of reunification for those children who come into care. And I'll say that in relation to both of those, our data does show that there is room for us to improve. We have improved our entries into out-of-home care quite a bit. That we've seen pretty substantial reduction in the entry rate per 1,000 children in the population, but our rate is still high compared to many states across the nation. We also have room to improve rates of reunification. We tend to be on the low end of that compared to other states nationally. We want to prevent reentry among children who reunify. We stand at the national level around reentry, but it's important that we keep an eye on that, because when you see more children reunify and more quickly, it tends to be accompanied by an increase in the reentry rate. So we always want to keep an eye on that. And then again, impacting disproportionate entry rates for Black and American Indian children is in the forefront of our minds. Along with that, our efforts to strengthen communities, this issue of disproportionality is especially important here. I think that there are many things that we can do to work on the prevention end so that we're seeing fewer children reported to us from Black and American Indian communities, but we also can provide culturally relevant services as one way to impact disproportionality of entry rates. So both of those are important factors, as are others. We've been fortunate that one of the program developers has offered to provide to us assistance of an individual who helped to write their parenting skills curriculum for African American families. So we're looking forward to working with that person. So if you want to move to I should have told you that's the slide I was just talking about. If you want to go to the next one, Felix, back to the to the timeline. So so after all of this exploration and analysis, we're now at the point to select and operationalize the program. The new program will include a single parenting skills training curriculum that will be used by all of our DCS contracted providers, which will help us have some consistency in language. and a home visiting program that provides individual family assessment and tailors services to meet the individualized needs of each family served. So I won't get into those too much, but the home visiting program, I can tell you, will have standardized assessment instruments that create a comprehensive family assessment that will complement the safety assessment completed by the department. And then we'll have a service plan developed with the family. Those clinicians will be trained in family empowerment and motivational interviewing theory and techniques so that we can have the best possible engagement rates of families and services. And then they take an active role of home visiting with the family, helping to connect them to concrete resources, therapeutic resources, helping to motivate them and move through stages of change, and providing some therapeutic clinical services as well. So what we're expecting is that we will award our contract by April 1st and go live by July 1st following a 3-month transition period. So that I hope I got that all in 10 minutes. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Catherine. Members, do you have questions for Ms. Guffey?
Peter, this is Bonnie.
Go ahead,
Catherine, I think that I heard you say something about training people in motivational interviewing. Are we talking about training both DCS staff and community providers in motivational interviewing?
So we already have some motivational interviewing training in our core training, and that is something that we would want to expand when we're ready to do that. We need to get through Guardian training for our staff first, and there's some other things on the horizon. But yes, that would be the intention, is that we all have that skill set.
Other questions?
Yeah, this is Jacob. I was wondering if we might be able to get a copy of the presentation.
Of course, Jacob, send it to you.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
send
you.
that out right after the meeting.
This is
And
really
we'll
helpful.
also post it on the web.
Very good. Any other questions for Catherine? Okay, hearing none. Catherine, thank you very much for your presentation. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. It's very informative, and those materials will be good as well. So thank you for taking the time to summarize all that. I know that it's concise, but it's a great encapsulation of all the hard work that's been going into this over the last 18 months. So thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, members, what I'd like to do with the balance of our agenda, agenda item 2, the annual report, and agenda item 6 are part of the same conversation. Agenda item 6 is just part of that conversation about the annual report. So I'd like to turn to the annual report next. And the balance of the meeting after that is going to be just talking about our next meeting we do next. So we have a draft that has been worked on over the interim period since our last meeting, and Nicole and Robin have been taking the leading oars on that. Nicole, was anyone else working on it with you besides Robin?
Yes, Judy. Actually, Robin and Judy took the biggest piece of this report.
Okay, Judy, Robin, Nicole, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Would anyone like to take the lead on discussing the draft with the committee?
I don't believe the committee has the report, do they?
Yes, I had sent it out.
So everyone's seen it?
I have a copy of it. I have not reviewed it very well. And I'm not clear what the report is supposed to do, or what we've sort of done in the past. So if you don't mind, I need to take a couple steps backwards and understand what the purpose of this is.
The purpose is it's our annual report, and we now serve the role of 2 committees. So this is also the citizen review panel report. And so in the past, we didn't have necessarily recommendations. So the citizens review panel is supposed to make recommendations that are actionable by the department. So we split, you'll notice that we described each meeting in terms of activities and actions, and then we followed that with recommendations, but we divided the recommendations, which we look at, into things that were recommendations for our committee. And if that was for our committee, we left it up with the section on the date of the meeting, and like with the activities and the actions. And then we put the recommendations that the department needs to respond to as a citizen review panel, put those at the end. I don't believe those are our final recommendations, because I think we have to look at them through a lens of, you know, is this something that is actionable by the department? So, and is it clear what we're stating? So I think we need to have a meeting where we work on those recommendations, and I'm not sure we have time anymore in today to do that.
Is it possible to have a separate meeting that just focused on this? When is this due, by the way?
I believe it's due in June.
No, the report, the Community Advisory Committee report is due in August.
We had previously talked when we also became a citizens review panel that we had changed that date to June.
Oh.
Yeah, so our calendar meeting was to spend the June meeting on the report. And that's written in the report as well. But since we didn't do that, we probably have to push it back.
When you say push it back, you mean not send the report out until it's finalized at the next meeting, or are you saying let's schedule another meeting in June just to focus on finalizing the report?
I'm not suggesting either, but it can't be just an ad hoc committee. It has to be a committee. It has to be the whole group that goes over it and makes the recommendations and approves them.
Right. So yeah, members, that's what I'd like to put forward is I think it would behoove us to take some time with this. If you haven't had a chance to read it through yet and provide your comments, we should go ahead and do that, and then schedule another meeting in June that is going to be focused on just one agenda item, finalizing this report and coming to the place where we can take a final vote to submit it so that it can be submitted by the end of June.
Do you need a motion to do that, Peter?
I think so, and I just wanted to, let me, for discussion first, are there any other alternative concepts that anyone wants to kick around before we start looking for a date in June?
So Peter, this is Mark. Being new, I'm not sure, but that explanation was helpful. Are we supposed to give a final recommendation, I guess, is what we're doing in June, or?
The committee has to review the report and review the recommendation section to make sure that they're correct in the recommendations we want to make. And then we have to vote on finalizing the report.
Okay. So when I read through the report, it looked like it was a summary of the meetings, but I do see in the very back, which I appreciate, that we've got a specific recommendation. So really, it sounds like we need to focus on the recommendations and see if we need to make that more concise or just what real recommendations need to be made. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I think we have to look at them through, a lens of whether this is something the department can respond to, and whether this is, are we asking too much? Do we just want to put forward our highest priority ones? Because it's a lot of work for the department to respond to these, and so they have to be specific and clear. And we will get a written response back to our report on each recommendation.
So this is Robin, if I can jump in here a second. The recommendations that were provided were really just a historic record of what recommendations were made at the meetings that are listed. So if we want to change the recommendations or make new recommendations, I think that's another meeting or event that needs to take place. But really, this is just a historical list, and some of the things on the list have already been accomplished by the department.
Right, and that's why we broke them out, Robin, we left some of them in under the activities and actions of each meeting, and we put separated some out to the end, but that was just us drafting it, and so I think it requires consideration of the whole committee. The other thing is, if there's some information that's missing or wrong, I think it's good for the committee to review and make any edits that way.
So Judy, you have given us then, by splitting out the recommendations and putting them at the end, to what could be a full, true recommendation by the committee to DCS, and what was just simply the committee asking for more information during the course of its meeting in the last year.
Correct, but there's some places I think I left some notes in where I thought some things were vaguely worded or unclear that I think we could improve upon it.
Okay. Well, let me mention one piece here. I think it's incumbent on us as a committee to make a specific, one of the things we were supposed to make recommendations about is any recommended changes in the law. And it's a pretty good starting place to assess whether the committee itself is a valuable process and make a recommendation. So this report goes to the legislature and the governor and the director. So I think we should have a numbered recommendation regarding our continuation as a committee, so that can be presented to the legislature and our lawmakers and policymakers can have a concrete recommendation from this committee, either that we continue and move forward, or that if there was any question about whether it's valuable as a process, valuable as a use of time for the department, that we or redundant in any way, that we state that as well. So I just want to echo that. I think we should always have that as a standing item that we would take up.
Are there people who think that the committee shouldn't continue?
So this is a typical. There's the number of kind of oversight type committees. Some of them statutory, some of them created by regulation, and ad hoc committees. The ways, there's a lot of ways that a committee like ours can come to life. And after a while, they can start to layer on top of each other. A couple of years ago, we did kind of a review of all the committees, child welfare committees that were out there. And I forgot who did work on that. In fact, you might have done work on that, Robin. I can't remember. But we were basically trying to find out if we were redundant in any way. And I just think it's a good practice to give guidance to the legislature and say, and just be concrete about it. We think we serve a clear, valid role and an ongoing role that's valuable, so we should be retained in statute and retained as an entity. Or if there's redundancies that we find, we should annotate those. My own view is that once we became a dual function committee, where we are serving both the purposes of the state statute and the federal law side of things, and our report actually is meeting both the requirements of federal law and state law, that alone is probably worth maintaining, having the committee maintain for that purpose. So maybe we should just note that much, but that's my own perspective on it. But in any event, I don't want us to be silent about it, or I would recommend that we not be silent about it.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I think that I need more time to actually review it. And I apologize. I didn't realize I hadn't done my homework before I feel comfortable saying it's ready to go.
Let's
Peter,
let's have a discussion then about time. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, Peter, this Mark, just for clarification, would it be helpful in this final document if we just recommended specific legislation action if there is that required? I mean, define that. And it looks to me like most everything in the summary is DCS related, not necessarily legislative.
So on the substance exposed newborn piece, the council will be working with DCS over the summer to look at that, and they're at this point, I think they are anticipating coming back with a piece of legislation about that. So I think we need to leave it in there.
Right, that was the only legislative thing I saw on the list.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I need more time to look at it before I feel comfortable.
What the way that number 3 is written, what bill is that referring to? Is that clear from earlier in the document?
No, I don't think I have the bill number in there, and I listened to all of the meetings, watched all of the meetings, and just did a summary. So I'm sure there's areas for areas.
Judy, I can get you the bill number. At the meeting that they talked about it, that we raised concerns, they didn't have a bill number
I
yet.
think people can just put in edit.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and take some time and review it and add comments, put in recommended edits. Is the easiest thing to do to send our feedback? Well, we probably have to go through Felix with our feedback. Let's Felix, just to make sure we're all starting from the exact same document after we conclude today, will you send it around to everyone, and we'll use that document as the one that we can send back feedback. And so members could we look at our calendars for June and see. Initially, I'd like to throw out 2 weeks from today. That would be the 19th as a day when we could potentially meet. How does that look for everyone?
Morning or after 3 o'clock works for me.
Thank you. Any other feedback about June 19th?
The morning would work better for me.
Morning is better. Okay. other feedback? I guess what I would throw out, unless someone wants to throw out an alternative date, is let's give ourselves 2 weeks and go ahead and schedule a 2-hour meeting, and hopefully we wouldn't need that much time to go over our combined comments and recommendations, and then finalize our report. And our focus will be to take a vote by the close of that meeting, so that we can have the report submitted on time.
Peter, would this be an executive session?
No, it would be a public meeting.
It would be a public meeting.
Although we would, their agenda will reserve agenda for executive.
Excuse me?
So,
Well, what would make the difference between it being an executive session and being a public meeting?
needing legal advice or covering confidential information that's confidential by law.
And is anything in the report something that is confidential that we would need to do that for?
It's all been in a public meeting anyway.
Okay. And if it's a public meeting, do we have enough time between now and the 19th to make the announcement? I don't remember what the time frame is.
Yes, we have enough time to make an announcement. Because I normally do it a week beforehand, but I think we're supposed to announce it at least 24 hours beforehand.
Okay. Could I volunteer my Zoom account for that meeting so that we can all see and hear one another? Or can we get the issue resolved with Microsoft Teams?
Well, what I would do again is use WebEx and not try Team. I have to find out why Team is, and Armando, we could do it the way we did it the last time. If you know,
yeah. I just want to make sure that we're able to make a good use of our time and everybody's able to contribute. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we'll look into that, and that could be an alternative. Yes.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for a specific plan for how we would schedule our time to work on this.
I'm happy to make that motion. This is Bonnie. Do I need to be exact about what we're motioning?
And what
yes.
would be the time?
Okay. I would like to make a motion to have a special meeting of the committee on June 19th to review and finalize the annual report.
Members, by way of discussion of that motion, it sounded like the morning would be better for at least one member of the committee. Does anyone want to propose a morning time, say 10 o'clock or something like that? How does that strike everyone?
This is Sergeant Long. That works for me.
Any other feedback about a time on the 19th? Bonnie, do you mind tightening up your motion to include a time?
I would be happy to revise my motion to say that the meeting will be on the 19th from 10 to noon.
Thank you, Bonnie. Members, you heard that motion. Is there a second?
Second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion about the motion? All right, all in favor of Bonnie's motion to hold a special meeting on June 19th at 10 o'clock, from 10 o'clock to noon, and it will be through online video. All in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay, Felix, you have what you need to record that vote?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that, members. The rest of the meeting is setting. We're not having public comment for this meeting. The challenges that we're having with being able to meet in a socially distanced way. And in the future, I think we'll discuss when we can open it back up for public comment in future meetings. But the two remaining issues left for this meeting will be acknowledging schedule for fiscal year 2021. So our first meeting will begin on August 7th for the following fiscal year. And then, of course, we've just added a special meeting so that we can finalize the work that needs to be done on the report. And then the other thing on the agenda for us is to set the agenda for the August 7 meeting. Start work on this and then add other things. But does anyone have anything they want to throw up for an agenda item, for an issue of focus for that first meeting in the new fiscal year on August 7th?
I think by August 7th, we will have a pretty good idea about what that prevention services program is going to look like. So we might want to update from Catherine again on that.
Okay, thank you. That's a great suggestion. Yeah, Catherine's update was fantastic this time, so it'd be great to hear where we are in a couple months. I talked over with someone else commenting. Go ahead.
Oh, this is Bonnie. One other thing is the CMDP integration. The DCS should be about to or has awarded the contract for that with a go live of April 1st of 2021. So we probably want to hear about that.
Okay, so that's the CMDP integration?
Yeah, physical and behavioral health integration. CMDP is going to take over the behavioral health piece from the REBAs. Okay, so thank you, Bonnie. That's another good one. So update on the CMDP integration from the department, and another update on the evidence-based program, the status of the rollout of the selection and rollout of the evidence-based program. Any other suggestions for that August 7th agenda?
Is it possible, this is Robin, for us to get an update on the Missing Children initiative that they were working on? They had some things that they were going to action. It would be good if we could hear where they are by August.
Very good. Thank you. But I'm sorry, was that Robin?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Okay, the Missing Children initiative. Robin, so we've covered that in a couple of different meetings. Is there something specific you want to reference? I'm trying to remember. I know it's been an item of discussion that we've gone through a couple different times, but to help the staff prepare for that update, is there something specifically that we'd be looking for them to follow up on?
I'm really looking for progress.
They also have a report that they have to do out of one of the budget verbs. I can't remember which one, on the missing kiddos. And there was some conversation about DCS voluntarily starting to track that data during the last session.
Okay, so it would be it would be about the report that is required by recent legislation that was passed as part of the budget. And it would be about any changes or updates to the department's practices in tracking missing children. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, can we get it into what's called the MORE report, the monthly operations report?
Okay. Felix, is that good enough?
It's Mark Huey that we probably want to have address that piece.
Okay, so for the missing child initiative, Felix, the request would be that Mark would lead that update for us.
Yes, he normally has. I think he had in the past, although the director had also in the past, when he wasn't director, had also spoken about that. And that's why I think on the report, I think we split out the missing and the runaway children.
Mm-hmm. Right. There were many hours of meetings during session about this particular topic.
Well, those are three good update issues. Is there anything else that anyone wants to raise now, or should we just go ahead and take a look at our do the work that we need to do over the next 2 weeks on the report? Maybe some other issues will crystallize through doing that.
Sounds like a full agenda for August.
Sure does. I'm inclined to agree with that. Felix, did you get those taken down, those three issues?
Yes, I did.
Thank you
I
very
usually
much for that.
listen to the tape anyway. But yes, I do have that.
Excellent, thank you. All right, members, by my count, we've reached the end of our agenda. Does anyone have any other comments regarding the agenda items that we've covered so far, or any other comments or questions related to today's meeting?
The only thing, Peter, that I put down are the proposed meetings for the next year, all the way through from August to June, and I actually have confirmed the governor's conference room at the Capitol on the second floor. So I think in the past the committee has just approved the dates going forward, so we know what those dates are.
Thank you, Felix. Would anyone like to make a motion to propose dates for the next fiscal year so that can be used to reserve rooms?
I have those dates on the agenda. Do you want me to read them off?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? I'm looking at it now. It's agenda item 7, members, if you've got it in front of you. But Felix, please go ahead and read it.
Okay, the dates are August 7th, October 2nd, December 4th, February 5th, 2021, April 2nd, June 7th. It's always the first Friday of the month.
This is Jacob. I have a question. In setting up this committee, was there any guidance around the frequency of meetings? Are there any requirements around that?
So I can speak to that a little. The citizen review panel requires 4 meetings a year. But when we felt that we weren't meeting often enough to be productive, that's when we changed it to every other month.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments about the meeting time, or would anyone like to make a motion to go ahead and adopt those? That is our proposed meeting schedule for the fiscal year 2021.
If nobody else will do it, I'll do it. This is Bonnie. I propose the meeting schedule be August 7th, October 2nd, December 4th, February 5th, April 2nd, and June 7th. over the next year.
Thank you, Bonnie. Does anyone have a second for that motion?
This is Nicole. I'll second.
Thank you, Nicole. Members, the motion is to adopt the proposed meeting schedule delineated by Bonnie and in our agenda for fiscal year 2021. All in favor of that meeting schedule, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? All right. We have the vote for the schedule. Thank you, Felix, for raising that to our attention so we can get that taken care of. And it's okay to go ahead and reserve those rooms now. Of course, if we are unable to meet in a scheduled room, we'll act as we have been and schedule meetings on an ad hoc basis through electronic means if necessary. Well, thank you, everybody. We are at the end of our agenda. I appreciate it. Would anyone care to make a motion to adjourn the committee?
Peter, this is Mark Upton. I'll make that motion. Can I just ask for clarification? When do you want our comments back on the recommendations?
That's a great question, Mark. Judy, Judy, Nicole, Robin, I guess I'll ask the team, what would be most helpful in terms of a return date for comments?
I don't know. I think if someone has edits, if they want to send them and track changes, that's great. I think always, but the recommendations, I think, are more of a discussion issue rather than comments.
Would it be too late to try to have everything in by the 17th, Wednesday the 17th? In terms of written feedback?
Can it be sent between meetings?
Yes,
it all has to go to Felix. It would all have to go to Felix, I believe.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Felix will be the one collecting the feedback, yes. And he'll be the only one that has all the aggregated feedback.
Yeah.
But then he can send it once he has heard from everybody and has confirmed that he's got all the comments that he's going to have, he can then send it around. And Felix, if you just double check that process will work with council, just to make sure, but I think that should work.
Peter, I apologize. Yes. I did not look at a calendar, and that June 4th, 2021, it's June 7th on the agenda, but that first Friday is June 4th. Do we need to revise the motion?
We probably do. Thank you for catching that. Let's see, June 4th, yeah. So are they all first Fridays after that?
Yes.
Okay,
everyone else is the right date for the first Friday. It's just the June 2021.
Okay. Felix, would you just note that?
Yeah. I will correct that.
I think we're... Thank you for raising that. So does that Wednesday as a deadline for written commentary of Wednesday work for everyone? Could be Wednesday the 17th.
Yes.
Yes.
And of course, if you can get it, if you can get to it quicker than that, it's especially if you have feedback, and especially if you have substantive feedback, the sooner you can get it in, the better. Okay, thank you for that, Mark. We'll use that as our deadline.
Great. I make the motion we adjourn if that's what you were asking for us.
I was. Thank you for making that motion. Any other discussion, members, or is there a second for the motion to adjourn?
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning this meeting of the DCS Community Advisory Committee, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. I appreciate it, everyone. We are adjourned.